Welcome to the Community Forum. My name is John Goliatino. I'm your host. This evening we're going to be talking with this year's candidate for the Democratic, the candidate for mayor on the Democratic side, Helena Abrantes. Now, I've known Helena for a number of years. She served 3 terms on the city council, and she's had also completed another, I believe it was 7 years on the council, and she was a city clerk for a term. And I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. First of all, before we get into some questions that we've talked about before we started, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, aside from the political stuff,
Sure.
and how you got to this situation that we're in today? Maybe a little bit about yourself, your family, and other things in your life.
I came to the United States when I was just turning 5 with my family, my sister and my parents. They moved here. My grandfather already lived here in the United States. We moved here from Portugal. I started kindergarten at Morris Street School as soon as we got here in the fall. Went to Rogers Park, graduated from Danbury High School, have been through the school system. I have 2 boys, Daniel and Matthew. My oldest son is at Fordham University. He'll be graduating next year and going to Columbia. And my youngest son is a graduate also of Danbury High, and he's at the University of New Haven majoring in criminal justice, and then he's in ROTC, so he'll be going to serve when he graduates from the University of New Haven. My husband and I have been married for, it'll be 24 years this month.
Time flies when you're having fun.
So, I mean, my entire life has been in Danbury. The person who actually got me involved in politics, I'm not sure sometimes if I should thank him or hit him over the head, was Chris Sotero when I worked on his campaign when he was running for state senate. But it was actually a very positive thing. I've enjoyed politics. I think it's very important that people get involved and voice their opinion, because if no one cares, then chaos occurs in a country, and this country gives everyone the opportunity to be heard, which is very important. And a lot of people are killing each other in other countries to have that opportunity to vote and to speak freely.
Exactly. All right. Now, how would your mayoralty, how would a Mayor Abrantes handle the situations that are going on? Let's get specific and say the entire thing about traffic and cleaner streets, and there seems to be a serious problem with Danbury roads that hasn't been addressed in the whole time this mayor's been in office.
That is true. One of the biggest changes that I've seen in Danbury, which is very disappointing to me, is we've had such massive overdevelopment that we had no plan for the traffic. And you cannot drive in Danbury without sitting in traffic for a good half hour at times. If I leave my house, and I live off of 37, to come down to the center of Danbury, if I leave 5 minutes late, it could take me literally half an hour to 45 minutes to get to the center of Danbury. And no one really took into consideration how the development was going to impact a lot of the traffic in the city. And there's extreme amounts of road rage due to the fact that so many people are waiting constantly with the traffic lights and the non-movement of traffic. But something has to be done with regards to the development. We have to do something to control it. I don't agree with giving tax deferrals to large...
Excuse me, we had a freeze.
I'm a little confused.
We had a freeze. The mayor freeze development, and then suddenly we had the tax deferral.
I haven't seen really any freeze of development, because I've seen tremendous amounts of homes and condos and apartments going up constantly throughout the city. And it's not in a conforming basis, which concerns me, because you want to basically keep the city at certain levels throughout the city. But the one thing that upsets me tremendously was the tax deferral for a developer for residential type properties.
You're talking about the Green Monster?
Yes. Well,
among
the
other
Green
properties.
Monster and also Kennedy Avenue.
Right.
As you're aware, when we were both on the council together, the only time that I've ever seen a tax deferral given to anyone was when we were bringing in a business and they were bringing in jobs. Perfect example was GE Credit. When GE Credit decided to move into Danbury, we gave them the 7-year tax deferral, but they also brought with them over 200 jobs. So that in turn made it very productive for the businesses in the area, the stores, the restaurants, etc., all types. It just involved everyone going throughout our community and was positive. It was a great tax base for the city of Danbury. And that's what you need to do, is bring that back in, because every time I talk to someone, it seems like more companies are going to be leaving the area. And we can't afford to have these factory buildings empty with no one in it. And also, if you've noticed, people are leaving. There are houses for sale all over the place. Tremendous amount of foreclosures that are going through. And also apartments for rent, a tremendous amount of apartments for rent, and people can't afford to pay the mortgages because the apartments are not being rented. So it's a major concern, because we can't keep maintaining the city at the rate that it's going right now. And one thing with traffic, I think it's very important that we improve our bus service, our train service. Any type of service that we can provide to someone where they don't have to operate a vehicle, we need to do that. And also, something that Gene had done during his tenure was, Gene Eriquez was, if you remember, we have Balmforth Avenue and Maple Avenue. It's one-way roads, and it's not something that's the most positive thing in the world, but in the long run, it's the best thing, because traffic flows much easier and you don't have as much congestion and as many problems. And the flow of traffic on those two roads now, compared to what it used to be, is really not a problem, because traffic just goes through there, as you're aware. So, I mean, there
are solutions if you work on a plan.
Correct, correct.
And there doesn't seem to be a lot of planning, but that's another story.
True, and we need to bring really good businesses back to downtown. We don't have that right now. We need cleaner streets. We need to really clean up and make and beautify downtown. When you're first coming off of the highway in many of the sections, it's very drab. There's just nothing there. There's nothing that when someone comes into Danbury, they say, wow, this is really nice. And it's actually very sad when you come into a town. And the irony is, I had someone at my restaurant the other day, a very nice gentleman, and we were talking about Danbury. He had moved here from Litchfield, and he said to me that Danbury was ugly, and that was very sad to hear someone say that, and that needs to be changed. We don't want someone to come into Danbury and say Danbury is ugly, because Danbury is actually not ugly at all. It's a beautiful city. It used to be gorgeous. You drive down certain roads with the foliage. It's lovely, and the roads have to be cleaned. You have to go after people that are littering, that are just loitering. The amount of people that are leaving garbage in front of their lawns, and there's signs on it that say free. You never saw that before. Not that I can remember. I mean, you know, if you're trying to stop the loitering, then you need to handle it in the complete aspect, not just in one certain thing and really not do anything about it.
Right. Now, do you have a plan on for recreational programs? That you think that's another area we talked about that you wanted to cover, right. Where you want to improve what's going on, because effectively nothing has been done in that area to add to what was done in the past. In fact, things have been languishing a little bit.
True.
Yeah.
I remember when we were both on the council, the bond issue approved the track and field for Danbury High School. I think that was the last big recreational type facility that we had where the public can use the track and field, and we do, now they do competitions for track there and everything. But I think that was actually the last big recreational thing that we did in the city. When I was on the council, Gene Eriquez had set up a committee to look into a skateboard park, because at that time, and still today, it was a big issue of people riding their skateboards on top of stone walls, on the benches, damaging the equipment, the
back of the post
chairs.
office, they were
Yes.
going on top of the park benches.
That's true. That's
right.
true. And so he had to set up a committee. The committee met. We came up with a proposal. The proposal was in turn put on the bond issue, and it was approved. And till today, I haven't seen anything happen, nor any type of discussion occurring with regards to the skateboard park. And that's something that's very positive. You can get kids involved, especially now because skateboarding has become such a big sport throughout the United States. Let's keep kids in an area where they can enjoy themselves and they're not going to get hurt and they're safe. And even adults, I mean, adults love to skateboard. It's not just children anymore. So, you know, that was one of the things. I would also like to do a type of a soccer stadium, but it would be, you could play soccer, you can play lacrosse, you can play baseball, you can do multitasking inside of a facility. Perfect example is Trumbull. Trumbull has their soccer dome, but in that soccer dome they play tremendous amounts of sports in there, both summer and winter. And we have to have a place where people can go and people can do things with their children, do things with their families, go and watch a sporting event. You have the ice skating rink now where families go and watch teams play, but that's really the only thing you have. Not everyone likes hockey. And so you need to do something else. I know that our family is thinking of going to see a sporting event at Giant Stadium within the next few weeks. There's a big soccer tournament that's coming, and there's 2 European teams that are playing. And you want to be able to do something like that because it entices children. You have tons of children in the school system that are playing soccer, that are playing baseball. And if you do things like that, it just motivates them and wants them to do something. And it takes the sport to the next level. And health-wise, it's wonderful because they're constantly talking about children being obese and not having energy to do anything, and so you're trying, it's a happy medium, and the schools can get involved and do things with it also.
Right. How would you fix the child care deficit that we seem to have in Danbury? That's another issue of yours, that
Right.
we seem to, we got a lot of working moms, but we don't have enough to take care of them, so a lot of them have to stay home or juggle their kids, you know, have their mothers or neighbors take care of their kids while they're working, the ones that actually have to. Go ahead.
It's true. I was always very fortunate because I had my grandmother who took care of my children, so I never had to worry about that. But it is a serious issue because basically both parents have to basically work in our society today to be able to maintain a home and provide to be able to provide for the children to do any type of activity or anything, even for themselves. Just the cost of everything, the way the increases are in the electricity, the phone system, the taxes, etc. Everything has really not allowed people to stay home. One parent to stay home. Some people are working during the day, the other parent is working at night, and that puts a strain on a relationship also. But I think the one thing that we need to do is set up a coalition amongst business people, both men and women, where you have a lot of these big corporations and you get them together and you start to discuss the possibility of opening up a facility in some of these businesses where you do have child care. There's other states that actually does this, and it's very productive. It's also it's great for the families because if the mom or the dad wants to go see that child, they can go down to the center, where the daycare center where that child is, and spend some time with them at lunchtime, and they're not rushing to run out to pick up that child when they leave work, because the child is right there in the facility with them. And it has worked in other towns, and I think it's something that's very, very viable in Danbury, especially with the type of companies that we have, and it would be very positive, and it's also cost-effective for the business owners if we could do something like that. But the first step is organizing a group of members of the community and the business area together so they can sit down, come up with some ideas and some proposals to try to better and provide the care for these children.
Now, I missed a question earlier while we were talking about traffic and all, and that is we got a global warming problem, and there are many that say that global warming starts at right down at every community. If every community could do something to alleviate the problem or chop down on what's happening, then we would greatly curtail, if not stop, the progress of global warming. What would your plans be?
That is true. I would like to, one thing that I would like to do is continue the type of work that Gene Eriquez did during his tenure. If you remember correctly, there was a piece of property on Barnum Court. That piece of property was contaminated with mercury because of the hat factories that we used to have in Danbury. And he took, it was called phytoremediation.
I was on that committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
There were the plants that they provided us through a grant, And we put those plants on that property, and it literally cleaned up the property. And there are so many grants out there available, and we just have to have someone to start looking into it, investing the time to find out where this money is, because there's a lot of money through grants that just sits out there, and no one ever goes after it. And I think that's very important. And I think having a person who can do that is critical to the tax base of a city, to be able to lower the tax base, to be able to maintain the city. And I think when I was in school, I remember recycling. Recycling was a major issue for everyone. And I would go home and, Mom, you can't put the glass with the cans. You can't put the magazines in the garbage. You have to separate everything. Right. And that's kind of died out. And I think in collaboration with the school system and just everyone educating people, it would be very positive. And if we could get the children to start doing that, children have a big influence on their parents, because they will say something if you're not doing something, especially when they're being taught the right way to do things. And people have to be educated. And that's one thing that I can actually do because of the fact that I speak Portuguese and I speak Spanish. I think one of the hardest things within our community is people are not being educated as to what the laws are of this country. And they have to learn. And in order to learn, you have to teach them and speak to them so they can understand. And that's critical. And if you can do that, it makes a big difference within the community itself. And if you see someone throwing out trash in the middle of the roadway, stop them. Call the police, have them arrested. You have to learn. You have to pay a fine. And we have to start doing that and imposing that, and people will stop.
I tie it all together. Now I'm showing my age. When they stopped history and civics, and they came in with the social science category, and we added a science course or something, and when they stopped that process, or whatever that happened in 1982 or whatever, it seems like nobody knows basic. Okay, there's a federal government, there's a state government. The federal government has two branches. The state government, they're like looking at you like you're describing another side of the moon or something. You know,
it's true.
Nobody seems to know what the law is, or how the laws get made, and where do you go for things.
Well, that's true, because people don't understand how the government functions a lot of time within the country. They're coming. You have a lot of people that came here that their education level was very low because of the fact that they came from a poverty area. They weren't able to go to school. They couldn't afford it. They had to try to survive whatever way they could. And so you have people that don't know what the laws are and what the rules are of the country. And I think you have to start teaching people, because when I came to the United States, I was basically taught, these are the laws, this is what you have to do. Never in my entire life would my parents ever consider going to anyone for help. They did what they had to do to feed us, to do whatever they could, and that's the way I was brought up, and it's the same way I've taught my children. I will do what I have to do to educate them, to be able to maintain them, and in an honest way, in a legal way, so that there is no issue. And everyone needs to learn how to do that. And you learn the laws, everything sort of flows in a good direction.
Well, we got to talk to our friends in the Board of Education to get those things back in there.
Yes, and I'm sure that they would enjoy doing it, because they did great projects, especially when I was in school with regards to that. Campaigns, awards for creativeness in bottle collection. You know, you had to separate the green bottles, etc. But that's all critical. I mean, education is really critical.
Right. The mayor's budget, let's put it this way. What are your opinions on the mayor's budget? There's many opinions floating out there, and there's some that I'd rather not say. But what are your opinions on the mayor's budget? There's go ahead.
Well, I think one of my biggest concerns was the fact that, well, we did the budget early, so people really didn't have enough time to actually review the budget properly. They didn't have the opportunity to speak to the department heads because none of them were at the meeting, the budget meetings. And if I remember correctly, when I was on the council and when both of us were on the council and we were at budget hearing meetings, we always had those department heads.
They all came in?
They all came in. We were able to ask them questions. We asked them how they felt about the budget, not having the finance director dictating to us that this is what it was going to be. And we made adjustments to that budget when we were on the floor, because no one can tell you exactly how a department feels except for that department head themselves. And I also have a serious problem with the fact that funds from the budget from the state he was hoping, I guess, for a state income tax increase, was implemented into the budget in Danbury. You cannot assume that something is going to occur and take those figures and put it into a budget, because if it doesn't happen, where do we get the money from? And I am very concerned about that.
Well, they tell me that the fund balance is at a record high. So instead of reducing taxes, he's got a large savings account there that he could take some off the till, so to speak, if he needs some. It seems to be some kind of a budgetary smoke and mirror game.
Yeah. I would believe it when I actually saw it.
Yeah.
But the one thing, I mean, it's just very bothering that you cannot look at a budget and you cannot assume that you're getting funds, and you can never do that, especially in government. It's just impossible, because things never occur the way that you want them to occur. You have to assume, this is what I have, this is what I have to work with. If you get more, that's absolutely wonderful, because that's better for everyone else. And if you remember, in the last, well, it'll be 6 years now, our taxes have been increased every single year, as well as sewer and water. I'm paying very high sewer and water bills for the properties I own, and it impacts me. I mean, it hurts. It hurts businesses, because people don't have as much money to go out and spend. It just hurts everyone. With the gas prices going up, people can't afford. They can't afford to live here right now.
Well, I was referring to that, and that in the book of suggestions. You know, the city charter says certain things, and this mayor, basically because he feels that there's no way that anybody's going to enforce the charter, that it's the book of suggestions. So it's a suggested law that he do this or do that, and he can have one person be 3 jobs, and so forth.
That was. Yeah, I think
the finance director I was referring to, how she was the civil service.
She was the director,
she was also a personnel director,
risk manager,
and the risk manager at the same time.
That is a serious problem, because the size of this city and the tax base that we have, your finance director has to be your finance director. There is no way that that person has any time to do anything else. Your personnel director has to be someone that is educated in human resources.
It's in the city charter.
Correct. It is in the city charter. It has to be a person that's educated in that area, and also has experience with union negotiation, which is critical, especially when you have your police department, your fire department, your employees for the city. And a risk manager, you need one individual. The size of this city, with the amount of population we have, the risk manager is basically taking care of every workers' comp claim, every claim against the city, every insurance claim. You name it, that person is taking care of it. And I'm a paralegal by profession, which is what I do during the day, and I know the work that it involves in a civil litigation matter with a personal injury and a workers' comp claim. You have to stay on top of the files. People need to get paid, otherwise they are calling you all the time. And you can't, there is no way that you can have one person be all 3 of those. And if there's an issue with the finance department, who is that employee in the finance department going to go complain to? Her boss is the personnel director, or his boss is the personnel director.
Yeah, you can't go to civil service, and you can't go to personnel, because that's one and the same.
It's absolutely a major conflict.
That person has no choice but to hire a lawyer and go to the state courts, because there's nobody to hear their grievance.
True. And so, I mean, it's a concern, and it's just like you have the Constitution. We have freedom of speech in the Constitution, freedom of religion. That was the main reason why many people came to this country, because they were being persecuted during the times of the Pilgrims when they came to the United States. You have that opportunity now. I'm concerned about some of those issues. A perfect example is what happened on the Common Council this past meeting with regards to the parade ordinance. The parade ordinance, it has a good idea, because of what had happened downtown. People cannot just gather together.
You can't have 200
from one moment to the next and completely block a street, because it's dangerous. If there's an emergency, people cannot go through. You can't do that. You need to educate people that you can't do that. But this ordinance does not, it does nothing to stop that or curb it in any way whatsoever. Basically, what it's going to do is, if you're a member of a union, you're going to have to get a permit in order to be able to gather together and voice your opinion.
Well, that's violating the Constitution, because under the Constitution, you're allowed the right to free assembly.
True, which will bring a lot of lawsuits against the city.
Right.
The way that this ordinance was being passed. It was approved for one day, but then in fact they realized that
The mayor
voting was not proper, it was not allowed.
Well, he was trying to vote as a councilman.
True. The only time that a mayor has ever voted is when you have a tie amongst the council, from what I've been taught all the years that I was on the council.
Well, if you have charter revision, the right charter revision, you won't have the mayor even in the council chambers, but well, that's probably a pipe dream. Anyway, you had another question we want to get done before we run out of time. How will you encourage employers to come to Danbury to pay a livable wage and provide the benefits that one would need to live here?
Right. Well, I think what we had talked about before, I think it's very important that you entice business to want to come into Danbury. We change the environment in Danbury a little bit. We make it more friendly. We provide great incentives to these companies to want to come in. If we need to give them a tax deferral, we do, because we want business here. We want everyone to have a job. We don't want people to be collecting unemployment. We want them all to be part of the community and be able to contribute. And the more companies that come in, the better it is for our residents and our taxpayers within the community. They have jobs, they don't have to worry, they can feed their children. You have people coming off of welfare, and it's not taxing a community as much. Also, a lot of these businesses will provide special programs for our education program if you work with them. I know I had spoken with someone, I met with someone the other day, wonderful ideas, what they've done down in St. Petersburg, where they have gotten a lot of the businesses to come in and contribute money to the school system, actually rewarding schools for scoring high points in order to take the burden away from the towns. So, I mean, we can do phenomenal things. We need to do tax deferrals if that's what we need to do for the businesses.
They're telling me we only got a minute left. Do you have a website that you can up and running for your campaign?
It will be through the Democratic Town Committee very shortly.
Oh, okay. So you're working on it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
And I want to thank the viewers for tuning in to Community Forum. Tune in next week, same time, same station. I'm sure we'll have another interesting program. Good night for now, and we'll see you then.